The Oklahoma City Thunder are about to be the most fun team in the NBA. Over the past couple seasons, the Thunder have done a very nice job at not only bringing in talent via the trade market, but were also able to do a great job at bringing in some nice young talent via the draft as well. And at this point, when you look at the Thunder's roster, it's pretty clear they actually have a lot of young talent on the roster. And in my opinion, due to that and due to some other factors, I see the Thunder going into this next season to be one of the more exciting teams in the NBA. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicySports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since moving on from both of their stars in Paul George and Russell Westbrook, the Thunder have done a really nice job at acquiring nice talent in those deals, but also acquiring a ton of draft picks for their future. Because when you talk about teams that are entering the rebuild process, the main thing that you want to look for those organizations is they first need to acquire draft picks, but at the same time, something that is a little bit overlooked is they also need to acquire players for right now. And when you look at what the Thunder were able to do in both of those deals for both Russell Westbrook and also Paul George, they were able to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who turned out to be a great player for them, but they were also able to get a ton of draft picks in return. And when you look at some of the moves that the Thunder were able to make, even besides those two deals, they were able to make a bunch of other trades in order to acquire a bunch of other draft picks as well. And when you currently look at the amount of draft picks they have a ridiculous amount of draft selections over the next 5 or 6 seasons. But just because an organization has a ton of draft picks going forward, that doesn't necessarily guarantee success. But a huge reason for why I'm personally very excited and think the Thunder are headed in the direction of a bright future is due to their actual front office. Now, when you look at their general manager in Sam Presti, he's been with the Thunder for quite some time. And when you look at some of the moves he was able to make throughout his career, they've definitely been very good ones. Whether you talk about some of his moves during the trade market, whether you talk about some of his moves during free agency, or even via the draft, he's done a really nice job on really all 3 levels. So that's a huge reason for why, in my opinion, I think the Thunder are in really good hands with this guy, and a huge reason for why I think not only do the Thunder have a ton of picks, but they're going to do a really nice job at actually drafting effectively. Because even when you look at some of the guys that the Thunder have already drafted, like Chet Holmgren or Josh Giddey, although we haven't necessarily seen a huge sample size for either of those guys, I do think both of them have a really bright future ahead of themselves. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why am I considering the OKC Thunder to be one of the most fun teams going into the league next season? Now, the first and most obvious has to be the overall young talent on the roster. Because in my opinion, when you talk about the funnest teams in the NBA, they typically consist of younger teams. And the reason for that is they're younger guys that you probably haven't seen all that much from, so you don't necessarily know what to expect, but also they're probably going to be more athletic, be a little bit more erratic, and what I mean by that is they're probably going to take some shots that some veterans wouldn't take, but at the same time, a lot of these guys are in the NBA for a reason. They're in the NBA because they're extremely talented. So you're going to see certain games where they look terrible, certain games where they look amazing, and in my opinion, that all makes for a team that's very exciting. And when you look at this OKC roster specifically, it's pretty clear that they have a lot of young players on the roster. When you just look at this team up and down, they have guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, Pokusevski. They just have so many different guys on this roster that are extremely young, and some of those guys are unproven. Really everybody besides SGA. So I feel like a real reason for why this team is going to be really fun is just due to the unknown with a lot of these guys. There's obviously going to be some ups and there's going to be some downs, but overall, when you talk about this young roster, I do think it's going to be very exciting to see the progress. But the next reason for why I think the Thunder are going to be one of the more exciting teams in the NBA this upcoming season is actually due to their coaching staff. Now, when you look at the Thunder's head coach, he's been a guy that hasn't had all that much experience in that role over the years. And although he was coaching the Thunder last year, that's really all the head coaching experience at the NBA level, at least, that he's had. So even though I do think he did a really nice job last season, he still is relatively unproven, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he progresses as a head coach as well. So overall, I think the real excitement about this team is their very talented but very young roster and unproven roster, alongside with the fact that their head coach is also very young and unproven. So to see the progression not only during this upcoming season but also in the long-term future is going to be very exciting and really fun to watch. But the next question that some of you may be wondering is, what are my specific expectations for this Thunder team going into this next season? Well, in my opinion, the expectations clearly aren't high. What the Thunder were able to do last season, although they did have some nice impressive stretches, overall it was not an impressive season whatsoever. But obviously at the same time, that is somewhat expected. They are still relatively early on into the rebuild process, and even some of the players that they drafted the previous season weren't really able to play all that much last year. But going into this next season, I do expect progression. I think a lot of the young guys are only going to get better with time, most importantly SGA, who's done a really nice job at proving that over the years, but even some of their other players are only going to get better with time, just due to the fact that they're going to start to feel more and more comfortable at the NBA level. So going into this next season, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if they do struggle a little bit or maybe even a lot early on, but as the season does progress, they only tend to improve. Because as the season does progress, and as a lot of these younger guys start to feel more comfortable at the NBA level, I think they're only going to start to build more confidence for themselves individually, only start to build better chemistry as a unit overall, but I think both of those factors in turn will make the Thunder a better team for it. And to be honest, once it comes down to playoff time, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if the Thunder are at least pushing for a playoff position. I'm not necessarily saying I think they're going to make the playoffs, but if they're at least pushing for that playoff spot, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, and at the same time, I do think that actually would be a pretty successful season. Even if they're not able to make the playoffs, just to show somewhat of a progression from what they were able to do last year would be really nice to see, and then the season following that, you would like to see them make the playoffs and just progress season after season after that. So overall, I am extremely excited to see what the Thunder are able to do, not only during this upcoming season, but also in the long-term future as well. And I just think due to the fact that they're led by a guy in SGA is really going to help cement their future. Because when you look at SGA currently at this point, he's an all-star caliber guy, as he did make the all-star team last year, but when you look at his resume ever since making it to the league, he's done a really nice job at consistently improving his game, and at this point, I don't really see any reason to believe why he wouldn't be able to continue on that trajectory. So overall, I'm extremely bullish on their best player in SGA. I'm also extremely bullish on some of the other guys they have on the roster, more specifically Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, and Josh Giddey. And lastly, I'm also extremely bullish on their front office and what they've been able to do over the years. I do think they're going to be able to do a really nice job at successfully rebuilding this organization going forward. So I guess only time will tell what does end up happening with this Thunder team, not only this upcoming season, but also in the long-term future. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think that OKC Thunder are going to be the most fun team in the NBA this next season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.